Tim is making quite a bit of claims about him disproving geometric unity and rendering it, a useless embarrassment of a piece of work. And I think that that is just nonsense. I want to talk about the proper way of giving criticism, and how do you really dismiss or disprove a theory of everything? Because Tim is making quite a bit of claims about him disproving the entirety of geometric unity and rendering it, a useless and embarrassment of a piece of work. And I think that that is just nonsense. I think geometric unity and Sentient Singularity Theory have a lot in common. They're not the same. I don't want to, make claims that, I don't know, others wouldn't agree with necessarily, but I will make the claims that I think are true. And I think it's definitely true that Sentient Singularity Theory and geometric unity have a lot in common. But like I've said, a lot of these have a lot in common. But there's also some differences between the two, but the structure that I've mapped seems to be the same structure that geometric unity is trying to describe. So the cosmological verse, the four primary perspectives, the the fundamental perspectives that are with the six fundamental perspectives in the binary triality, which I think is the Calabi-Yau manifold, like that structure is also part of geometric unity, it appears to be. And so in a way, my defense of geometric unity today is a bit of also a defense of sentient singularity theory. And if you don't know who Tim is in this drama, and I'm not going to try and get into gossip too much. I don't like lobbing insults at people. And, giving character attacks. Everybody has ulterior motives. Everybody has, an agenda of personal gain, and that's fine, as long as it's not at the expense of the whole. And we're going to talk about what destroys the goal of science. Eric Weinstein released his theory of geometric unity, which is a theory of everything. Tim released a paper criticizing geometric unity with an anonymous co-author named Theo, that was going by the name of Theopolia, I think. It doesn't really matter because it's not his real name. And there is a debate going on of whether or not criticism should be anonymous. And this is one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit in regards to how science should be done. And I recognize that there are mathematicians, engineers, Satoshi Nakamoto, or whatever the guy was that supposedly, invented Bitcoin, who's anonymous. I get it. There are people who have been anonymous in the past and made incredible contributions anonymously. But you have to, if you're going to do something anonymously, the context in which you do something anonymously, I think, where it would be appropriate is if you're building something, you're engineering something. It's your, cryptocurrency. It's your, blockchain system. I don't know, whatever it is. If you're engineering something that kind of speak for itself and doesn't get debated, it doesn't need to be debated in order for it to be utilized. That is the type of structure that you can do anonymously. But if you're going to lob criticism of someone else's work, it is not right to do it anonymously. It's not a fair fight. When you are criticizing somebody else's work, it's not really supposed to be a fight, but it always ends up being a fight. So if it's going to end up being a fight, it should be a fair fight. And that means that you have to put your reputation on the line. And people told me, oh, well, his pseudonym's reputation of Theopolia is on the line. what the, how does that even make sense? He can change that name, and it just is not, that's such a nonsense argument. You can abandon any, you know, I guess, event that takes place that would be linked to you going forward. You can abandon it by changing your pseudonym or your, you know, or anonymous name. That's not the same as having it linked to your real name. And you can't make the argument that it is the same as being linked to your real name if you're not willing to use your real name, because obviously there's a reason why you don't want to use your real name, otherwise you'd use it. So it's not the same. And it's being argued that it is the same. It's not, by a few people, at least, or a number of people. And this, you know, debate has kind of like gone on to include Luis Razzo, who I've interviewed on here, who I really like, and he's always welcome back. I really think he's onto something with his theory, so this isn't like about him. I do disagree with him very much on this, and the disagreement that we have is whether or not Tim is an expert, and on that would be, you know, a good investment of the 10 hours it takes to engage with and plan a conversation, and also the, you know, the fallout from that conversation being public. So and this is not a criticism of Tim personally, this is just a criticism of, you know, it is a critique of, I think, the idea that you are an expert who is worthy of being engaged with on this subject of a theory of everything just because you have a degree in physics or math, or you're very good at physics and math and you have degrees in it and you work for Google AI. It doesn't matter. I'm not here to question Tim's intelligence or Eric's intelligence. We're dealing with very intelligent people, and who are also just people and wrong. But the point is that if you're going to criticize the theory of everything, and I got into this with Tim a little bit on Twitter, and he thought I was insane for saying this, but is that I said you have to believe in an alternative hypothesis, an alternative theory to the one that you're criticizing. If you're saying that one is wrong, geometric unity is wrong, then you have to believe in string theory or Tim's theory or, emergence theory or the CTMU or whatever it is, Sentient Singularity Theory. You have to believe in something in order to not believe in something else. And if you try and disbelieve in something without having it be an emergent perspective to have on something, then you are subscribing to a negative ideology, or an anti-ideology, as I call it. And an anti-ideology is cognitively and mentally trapping and like, I mean, it's dangerous to your thought process. You always end up becoming exactly what you are opposed to. And the reason why is because you can't actually define yourself by something that is non-existent, okay? So if you're going to try and define your perspective as that's wrong, but it's not an emergent perspective due to you believing that something else is right. What happens is that instead of defining yourself by that thing that you believe is right, that is different from that thing that you emergently believe is wrong, you believe that something is supposedly wrong, but really you just believe in that thing. And that sounds crazy, but it's not when you really examine how our mind works. Any point that you focus on becomes your focus. So this is why anti-fascists become fascist. This is why anti-racists become racists. This is why anyone who claims to be anti-something ends up becoming that thing. And so if you are claiming that, something is wrong, and it's not an emergent perspective that you have due to believing that something else is right, that is not, that is mutually exclusive of whatever it is that you're emergently, disbelieve in, then what happens is that you end up being defined by nothing. And whatever your focus is, whether it's beating someone in an argument, whether it is opposing, fascism or racism or geometric unity, you will end up believing in something that is linked to that. So you might end up becoming racist or fascist, but when it comes to science, you're not going to become a geometric unity, but you will end up latching on mentally to something else that's not constructive. It's going to be destructive perspective because it's an anti-ideology. It is a destructive ideology intrinsically. And this is why I don't like skeptics. And the idea of scientific skepticism is a stupid idea. It's not just a stupid idea. It's not just an incorrect idea. It's a non-idea. Okay? It's not defined by anything that is belief. So if you're a skeptic, and that's how you approach the UFO phenomenon, then you're just anti-UFO, which is stupid. Like, you should be pro-something, not anti-something. Let your disagreements be emergent from your beliefs. That's a great quote. I'm writing that down, sorry. Let your disagreements be emergent from your beliefs. That's so important, and it applies very, very much to scientific criticism. If you are just someone criticizing somebody else's work and saying, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, and you don't have anything that you believe in or that you have created that is an alternative, then you just will fall victim to your own mind, and you will trap yourself into a social situation where you basically have defined yourself by as a destroyer. Okay? And science, if it's constructive science, if it's constructive criticism, if it's constructive feedback, it by definition must be constructive. And you cannot be constructive if you define yourself as a destroyer. And you define yourself as a destroyer if you subscribe to an anti-ideology or you have an anti-perspective going into something. So like if you disbelieve, this is why atheism doesn't exist, okay? It's anti-theist. And the reason why is because you can't just not believe. You have to believe in something. This is how the mind works. You can't say, well, I don't believe in God. I have a lack of belief in God. Sam Harris says this, and he's just oblivious to how his mind has trapped him in this topic. He'll say, I'm an atheist. An atheist has a lack of belief, a no belief in God. It's not that you don't believe in God or you would believe that God doesn't exist. It's that you have a lack of belief that doesn't exist. You only have belief. You only have belief. This is why people will say, someone that doesn't believe in anything will believe everything. Or, someone that believes in nothing will believe in anything. Something like that. It changes. But that is due to this same phenomenon where your mind requires something to latch onto. It is mentally inevitable. There's no way to work around it. The only way that you can have a lack of belief, like me in QAnon, I have no belief in QAnon. I don't engage with it. Okay? If I were to engage with the subject, I would intrinsically form a belief, and that belief would come out some way or another. And if I denied that belief, then I would be in denial of reality, which is not good. But I don't engage with the subject at all. I don't research it. I know nothing about it. I know some people that I know are really into it, and some people I know think it's nonsense, and I just don't engage. And that's fine. But if you're going to make a statement about something, then that is descriptive, then you have to have a belief in it in some way, shape, or form. So I really am starting to think about the way in which criticism should be lobbed, because I've noticed this in criticisms of Sentient Singularity Theory and my own little theories within Sentient Singularity Theory regarding especially bot periodicity. I've talked to you guys before. I believe bot periodicity is basically what I call the stages of sentience, and it's loops of consciousness within other loops of consciousness. And so I spoke to a PhD mathematician about this, and they told me that I knew nothing, and I was like, okay, well, if it's not what I think it is, then what is it? And they were lost. They had never been asked that question, and people listening were like, okay, you know what? It's actually apparent that, Tyler, you might be wrong about what you believe it is, but it's also clear that so-and-so, he doesn't actually know what it is. And that mathematician's statement to me was, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's not that. It's not what you think it is. But it's not something that I can define. It's just not what you think it is. This is having the perspective of a destroyer. It is an anti-ideology. It's less than useless. It's destructive. It's counterproductive, which is destructive. And I think that I think that Tim's paper on geometric unity is that. And it's not a critique of Tim's character. Like I said, I have my own opinions, and everybody fails, and everybody also has redeeming qualities. I'm not going to lie about that, and I don't know Tim very well, but I will say we don't see eye to eye at all. We have very different focuses, but that has nothing to do with this paper. This paper is purely debunking geometric unity and not proposing an alternative. And this is an anti-ideology. It is a destructive effort by Tim and this anonymous person. And I totally understand why somebody wouldn't want to engage with somebody who has destructive intentions. And that is destructive intentions. It doesn't mean that he has malicious intentions. And I would argue that destructive intentions are very similar to malicious intentions, but they're not consciously malicious intentions. We all have destructive intentions sometimes. So, like I said, again, it's not a judgment. But it's important to understand why they are, I guess you could say malicious, but they're not really malicious. They're just destructive. And destructive intentions are not good intentions. Good intentions are generative intentions. They grow. Goodness, understanding, life, prosperity, whatever, peace. But to grow contention is by releasing an antipaper is wrong. So it's literally objectively wrong. So if you were, I think his name is Lee, I need to look, someone who focuses on loop quantum gravity, and that's your theory, or string theory like Michio Kaku, or E8, the exceptionally simple theory of everything by Garrett Lisi, Eric's, quote unquote, arch nemesis. If you disbelieve in geometric unity, because you believe in Garrett's exceptionally simple theory of everything, that is constructed around E8, that is fine. If you believe that a certain theory is wrong in physics because you believe, if you believe that materialism and the idea that consciousness comes from unconsciousness, which is a current physics, narrative, if you believe that that is wrong because you believe in sentient singularity theory, that's fine. But if you just disbelieve that, in that idea, that's not correct either, or disbelieve in the idea of theism, that's not correct either. You will end up like Sam Harris, who is just like a chicken with his head cut off. And I say that completely honestly, and not judgmentally either, but you will end up being a chicken with its head cut off if you subscribe to an anti-ideology. I used to have this quote on my Twitter, and it said, if you chase a chicken with its head cut off, you are a chicken with its head cut off. And if you are subscribing to an anti-ideology, or you are defining yourself by non-existence, okay? So basically you're saying, my perspective is defined by that not being true, aka it's not existing. Because if something is true, then it exists. So if something isn't true, and you're defining a perspective by that, then you are defining your perspective by something that doesn't exist, by non-existence. That means your focus is on non-existence. Literally, your focus is on non-existence. This will make you a chicken with its head cut off, and there's no way around it. You have to believe in something. And I asked this of Tim. I was like, I said this, I was like, unless you believe in another theory, whether you came up with it or someone else came up with it, if you believe in an alternative, theory of everything that is not geometric unity, that is fine. That actually would help this conversation be constructive. But it's not constructive. It's just destructive. And his work is just destructive because it's just focused on something that doesn't exist. And he would argue, and others would argue, no, it's focused on GU. But you think GU doesn't exist. So you're focusing on something that you think is non-existence or not true. You have to believe in something as true that is mutually exclusive of a perspective that is emergently then false. You cannot let disbelief lead. It has to follow belief. If disbelief leads, then belief cannot follow. If you don't believe, if I ask you, you're like, what do you think about geometric unity? Well, I don't believe in it. Okay, well, why? Because I don't. Okay, well, what do you believe in? That geometric unity is wrong. Okay, what just happened is that there's no belief that generated, okay? It's just disbelief. And that's because belief cannot follow disbelief. Only disbelief can follow belief. So if you say, what are your thoughts on geometric unity? Well, I think it's wrong. Why? Because I believe in sentient singularity theory. Okay. This is like a concept that I don't really know if it's possible to teach someone regarding, you can't be anti. And I've tried having discussions with people about it, and I don't seem to get anywhere unless they already understand this concept. But you can't be anti. You have to be pro something, or you will be a chicken with its head cut off, and you won't realize it, because a chicken with its head cut off is lost. It doesn't know where it's going. It doesn't know, if it has a, how much longer it's going to live. Like, it knows nothing. It doesn't know if it even has a head, because it doesn't have a head to perceive whether or not it has a head. So, like, you're just screwed. And if you subscribe to an anti-ideology like atheism, that's an anti-ideology. I don't think it's possible to be agnostic. It's something that's too intrinsic to to everyone's everyday experience that you're either an anti-theist or a theist, and you can't be an atheist or an agnostic. Like you could be agnostic to QAnon because you don't have to choose to, engage with it. You do have to engage with existence, and so there is no avoiding whether or not you think that it is a sentient being or not. So you can't be agnostic about God. And, people can come at me with all they want with that, but I would definitely be willing to discuss that with anyone, because I think that they're wrong. But debates are stupid. But it's the reason why debates are stupid is because they frame everything as not that guy. Okay, you winning means he loses. Okay, so that's not objectively true in reality. The theory of growth, the theory of everything is a theory of growth. It is a theory that is not, conservation of energy or entropy or your win is their loss. This is why debates are stupid. They're just as stupid as an anti-ideology. They are. They're not constructive. If you don't have an alternative to geometric unity, you should probably shut up about it. Other than just like, here, I think I noticed a math, error in your work, and here you go. Here's this math error. That's it. Have a nice life. I don't need to come on your podcast and go on everybody else's podcast and discuss you endlessly or discuss geometric unity endlessly because I just corrected a math equation. That's about the extent of interaction with a theory you should have if you don't have an alternative that's positive. Okay? And I've also discussed before that anybody that's not really working on a theory of everything, there's just no way almost that they can know what is required of that type of work. Because the constraints and freedoms of it are so different than any other, than exploring any other subject. And it's also extreme, it's like hyper constrained in a way that nothing else is that we know in science. And the constraints are counterintuitive to the way that every other subject and field works. So you can't just use what you know from other subjects on it. And I don't think that you can actually be a worthy, like, somebody who's really able to debate the aspects and the parameters of a theory of everything, unless you have one, or you're working on one. Now you can discuss one. Kurt Scheimungle from Theories of Everything does it all the time. Lex Friedman does it all the time. Lots of people do it all the time. Right now, Brian Keating does it all the time. But discussing it and being able to actually like challenge certain things that aren't just like, hey, this equation, this no-go theorem, it's like to challenge the logic the emergent logic that inevitably leads to a specific structure. You have to understand the rules of creating a piece of work like that. And you just can't know that unless you do it. So I said this to Tim. He didn't agree with me. He was like, you don't have to be a bird or have feathers to know what a bird is. This is a different type of experience than that. That's not a good metaphor for the issue that you face when you're just critiquing a theory of everything from the outside. You can't know what a theory of everything is unless you're building one. You really can't. Like, this is why nobody seems to know what it is because the only people that know what it is, or possibly know what it is, are people who are working on it, and that's like 20 people in the world. And you can go by their definition, but like, you know, my definition is probably the most succinct that I've heard, which is that a theory of everything is a recognizable, predictable, and describable pattern that occurs in all instances of objective observation and an explanation for such pattern. You don't know what objective observation is unless you're working on a theory of everything. Like, you can kind of start to intuit if you study and you really work on it, but you have to work on it. If you're not working on it, I can't just tell you what objective observation is and have you truly understand it. But if you were working on this, or you follow this work closely, you know, on a daily or weekly basis, and you discuss with me, and you're in our Discord chats, and you're on here in this, you know, the chat, then you can actually like start to get the hang of this. But you have to study it, and you have to throw out any preconceived notions of what the requirements and constraints of that structure would be, because you don't know until you do it. And I will say this, if you're critiquing someone else's work and they have worked on it for 30 years or 20 years or 1 year, it doesn't matter, and they're sticking it out into the ether for all to see, and it's something as crazy as a theory of everything, and they're putting their name behind it, and you're just criticizing anonymously, that is being a spineless jerk. Like, if you don't have the spine to put your reputation on the line when you engage with a topic, don't. Pure skeptics make me laugh. They are religious as the people they tend to close out. They're more religious. They're more destructively religious than people who are, you know, dogmatically Catholic or something like that. If you are an atheist and you are, you know, if you are somebody who your atheism is a leading perspective in your life or a leading focus, or an area of heavy focus for you, like Sam Harris or something, you are more religious than the people that you despise. And this is what I mean. It's an anti-ideology. You become exactly what you oppose. Sam Harris is more religious than any Catholic on earth, because those Catholics at least believe in something, even if it's right or wrong, or it doesn't matter. They believe in something, and their disbelief in something else is due to their belief in that. Whereas Sam Harris, he doesn't believe in anything. He believes in not believing, which doesn't make any sense. And sorry, there's like a gecko freaking out over there or something. I can't really tell what's happening. I think it caught a bug, but like, you have to believe in something. It's so essential, and if you don't have a belief on a certain topic, stay out of the topic. Just stay out of it. Tim should stay out of the theory of everything until and the discussions regarding it, until he has one that he believes in himself. And it doesn't matter if he created it or if he studies it, but it was somebody else's creation. He has to believe in one and let his disagreement with geometric unity be emergent, not defining. That's so stupid. And I understand why it's hard to see that, the stupidity of it, but it is stupid. It's just wrong. It's like when they say there's no bad questions. There are bad questions. Bad questions is like, do we have free will, or is the universe deterministic? Like I've talked about before, determinism and free will are two dependent aspects of each other. They are two sides of one coin. When you actually understand existence, that makes it a bad question. because there is no answer that the question leads. You'd have to abandon the structure of the question as an either or, and then basically take up the position that is, you know, a superposition, be like, well, it's both. But that doesn't answer the original question, because the original question doesn't have an answer that's true. So, you know, there's lots of bad questions, and we don't know what a bad question even is, because the people who are teaching you that there's no bad questions don't actually question anything. Because if they did more often, they would understand that some questions have no answer, and those questions are bad questions. If you're not a theorist of the theories of a theory of everything, you can't understand when the rules change without being pointed out. So if I say 0 doesn't exist as a number in objective metamathematics, or like the math that is required to describe existence itself cannot include 0 as representing of an empty set or not or nothing, because nothingness doesn't exist at that. When you're describing existence, you're describing somethingness, not nothingness. There's only somethingness when you're describing somethingness. So 0 can't represent nothingness. And you know, so I have this page on my website under writings, redefining 1 and 0. Check it out. It says basically that 0 becomes a structure that exists in a superposition of oneness and infinity, of 1 and infinity. And in this objective context, in a subjective context, sure, 0 can represent an empty set or nothing, or, you know, but it can't in the theory of everything. So you have to change the rules of math. And if I tell that to Tim or someone else who's not really working on a theory of everything, they're just criticizing them from the sidelines, or Sabine Hassenfelder, they're not going to get it. Like, they'll be like, that's just some mathematical, like, you know, like tricks to say that 0 is infinity because all positive and negative, you know, numbers added together are summed equals 0. So therefore it's equal to everything, not nothing. And they'll be like, that's just a mathematical trick. It's like, well, does it work? That's the question. Does it work? But there's so much dogma, and you have to see it for yourself, experience it firsthand, because your firsthand experience always trumps secondhand information. So in order for it to override that secondhand information that you've had drilled into you your entire life, and the firsthand information that also you have experienced regarding, you know, things like 0 representing nothingness, or nothing can exist, because you can say, what's in this box right here? You know, nothing. But really, that's impossible. But I mean, if I handed it to you and I was like, what's in the box? Nothing. But that's, you know, the difference between like an operative like model of existence. So of how we maneuver. So like it's an operative theory. I think Eric Weinstein has described it as, it's like it's a good model that allows us to maneuver and operate, but it's not actually describing of what is objectively true. So what is objectively true? It's definitely something in the box. But what is operatively true? It's nothing in the box. And this is the type of thinking that you only get good at when you're actually describing existence and you're like really focusing on it. But if you're not working on a theory of everything, you're just like critiquing someone's math equations. Good luck, like understanding the nuances of that. Like, I'm a logician, I can evaluate ontology and argument structure. I can leave the truth of the premises to the theorists to discuss for their sake. Yeah, that's true. You just can't have like skin in the game, really. Like, but you can like engage. But not in a way that's, you know, super meaningful to you until you have a belief. And as soon as you have a belief, then you're engaging with it, you know, totally. You're not just like, it's not just like this, you know, for the sake of argument, assume this. It's like this has now become a belief, and it's not just for the sake of argument, it is your understanding. But there is my abstract to my paper. Regarding what the definition of sentient singularity theory is. Sentient singularity theory describes the totality of existence as a singularity of sentience that is creating additional sentient singularities within itself. Each sentient singularity perceives four primary perspectives that define relationships, allowing for orientation beyond relativistic contextual descriptions. These four primary perspectives of inside, outside, separate, and oneness are entangled to form instances of perception of the instance itself by the instance itself. The self-aware instances that compose a sentient singularity are called quanta of consciousness, given that the primary perspectives are perceived in instances of consciousness and that someone can only be conscious of perspectives of relationships. A sentient singularity's quantum of consciousness and the entangled primary perspectives that inform it are simultaneously created of and created by each other. This pattern results in a oneness of mind composed of the union of a single head string of consciousness built on an assembly of entangled body points of perspective. This united head-body pattern of singularity informing and informed by an entangled assembly of four primary perspectives is the universal and fundamental source code of existence, and it is present and repeating in all instances of objective observation that can be made in any field of study. That is like the abstract. He's starting from a similar thing here where in defense of Eric Weinstein, to relate back to the original structure, the problem. And he's like, what really interests me is whether God had any choice in the creation of the world. I've talked to Eric about this, and it doesn't appear like God did. That doesn't mean that God didn't have any choice. It just means that it appears like God didn't. The constraints of creating a universe are so tight that it appears like there's only one way to make a meaningful creation. And I've talked to Eric directly about it, and he agreed with me. He says, in the beginning, we will let X4 be a four-dimensional C to the power of infinity manifold with the chosen orientation and unique spin structure. It is otherwise considered to be without a geometry, and that is no metric, symplectic, complex, volume, quaternionic, or other structure is yet imposed upon it. This is the same thing as each sentient singularity perceives four primary perspectives that define relationships, allowing for orientation beyond relativistic contextual descriptions. That's what it is. That's what this is, this structure in GU. But GU doesn't define it as well as sentient singularity theory. I mean, the interactions between that X4 manifold in sentient singularity theory are very detailed, and they're only getting more detailed, and I'll release it next week. Like, the idea that Tim disproved GU completely and it's a dead theory, that's nonsense. It's just nonsense. The philosophical and theological implications of geometric unity are also largely correct and consistent with sentient singularity theory. And everyone else's work in this right now, like Clear Irwin's work and Stephen Wolfram's work. Tim needs to reassess what it means to disprove, and he should try not to disprove something. This is like when people in sciences are like, well, is it falsifiable? If it's not falsifiable, then it's not a legitimate theory worthy of being taken seriously. It's like, you think you can falsify the truth? Do you think the truth is falsifiable? Like, actually falsifiable? Try falsifying the idea that existence exists. Good luck. Like, it's such a stupid idea. An idea of, like, is it falsifiable is a stupid idea because it's a wrong idea. That's what it is. It's not stupid. It's wrong. It's incorrect. It's a non-idea. That's what it is. It's a non-idea. It doesn't actually exist. There isn't, like, if something's falsifiable, it's not the objective truth. If something is the objective truth, it's not falsifiable. That's the point. I don't understand why you would want. This is what I mean by like, the rules of science change when you're describing existence itself versus describing a segment of existence. If you're describing some phenomenon in biology and you're like, okay, this is my theory in biology, this is my theory in chemistry, this is my theory in economics, it's falsifiable. You can check it and see if it's, well, if I ask you, like, if you tell me, okay, I have 3 apples in my fridge, it's falsifiable. We can be like, okay, you know what, let's go check your fridge and make sure you have 3 apples. And if not, then it's been falsified. But you can't be like, let's falsify the idea that we exist. It's like, you cannot falsify that idea. Like, you exist, and you by definition, are proving your existence by even attempting to falsify your own existence. So it's like, I think, therefore I am. You can't falsify that. And that is the difference between a field whose goal is the description of the pattern of the totality of existence itself versus a field that is a segment of that existence and exists in relativity and not objectively. Anything that objectively exists, it's not falsifiable. It's like consciousness. Cannot falsify the idea that consciousness exists. It's like when those philosophers who were getting their PhD in the philosophy of consciousness were like, my theory is it's a non-theory. They said it was a negative theory, which is an anti-ideology or an a non-belief, an anti-belief belief. And, you can't falsify the idea that consciousness exists. There's no way to do it, because in trying to do it, you prove it. So, like this, you have this, but getting the scientific community that's not working on a theory of everything and not really, like, perceiving the constraints and freedoms of this task to recognize that that you should not be seeking falsifiability is not going to work. Stephen Wolfram recognizes this, though, because he is seeking a theory of everything. I heard him say we shouldn't seek falsifiability, we should seek confirmation. I'm like, yep, that's the way to do it in this. Now, in subjectivity, seek falsifiability, but in objectivity, seek confirmation. In subjectivity, you'll experience entropy. In objectivity, you experience growth. And, or entropy is intrinsic to subjectivity, but growth is intrinsic to objectivity. So, aestheticness doesn't exist in subjectivity, but it does in objectivity. So, like, these rules change. And you have to know why and where and how they change, or else you are not worthy of being called an expert on any theory of everything, unless you are aware of these things because you worked very, very hard on someone else's theory, or you worked very, very hard on your own. And, Tim has not done this. So he cannot know, like, this stuff. He can't. Like, this is what I don't understand, why my biggest like critique isn't even of Tim, it's of Luis, who I really like. In, you know, this isn't a personal attack. It's just like, he does have a theory of everything that's really onto something. Has a lot of similar structures to mine and to geometric unity. But yet, for some reason, he's willing to call, you know, Tim one of the few experts worthy of, you know, engaging with, you know, on geometric unity. No, he's not. Not at all. Like, if you don't have a theory that you're working on very intensively, you're not one of those experts that's worthy of a long discussion and a debate, or not a debate, but a little bit of a debate, but a challenging conversation. I'll say that, a challenging conversation versus like you've challenged aspects of it, of this idea. You know, you might critique the math a little bit, but you didn't challenge the idea. I asked Tim, what are the philosophical implications of geometric unity, of the you know, and its cosmological implications? Crickets, because he doesn't know. He doesn't know. Like, I don't think so. At least, I mean, he answered me on other things, but not on that. He just sent me a link that was like, everything you need to know is here, and it was like a link to all of Eric's talks. It's like, I've seen them. I don't need you to send me them. And his you know, the interviews that he's done, you know, mathematically, I'm not going to comment because I don't know. You know, I'm not as mathematically literate as him, but I do know that the rules of the math will change in this space, so it doesn't really matter much that he is like trained in math. This is a whole new field of mathematics. That's why Stephen Wolfram calls it meta-mathematics, and we should seek confirmation instead of seek falsifiability, and we should call it meta-mathematics instead of calling it mathematics. It's like, so who's the expert? Like, point to them. You know, Kurt said this. He said, anybody who's working on a theory of everything, he's basically realized has to invent their own field. It's so true. And we're converging that field now. But, you know, with dragging a lot of egos along the way. But it's like, there is, if you're not working on a theory to describe existence objectively, you're not an expert on the theory of everything, whether that's geometric unity or emergence theory or sentient singularity theory or the CTMU. It doesn't matter. Tim's work is worthy of reading the paper, but like, I can't say that he has any legitimacy in his understanding of like this field. Like, really, like, objectively, I don't think so at all. These people who are just consumed by abstract mathematics and don't ever link it to, you know, hard reality. It's like, well, it's what is Bott periodicity? Point to the instance of reality that you can touch and tell me that's Bott periodicity. And if you can't, then, and you don't think that it exists in an instance in which you can touch it and see it and interact with it, who are you to tell me what it is if you don't actually think it exists? Okay, response to geometric unity. Timothy Nguyen and Theopolia. Abstract. We distill some of the technical ingredients behind geometric unity, a recently proposed theory of everything by Eric Weinstein. In doing so, we identify specific gaps, both mathematical and physical in origin, which jeopardize geometric unity as a well-defined theory, much less one that is a candidate for a theory of everything. Okay, so they're just destroying. And I'm not saying that, you know, even if geometric unity was wrong, it's like, it's still wrong to just rip it apart with because you are just looking to destroy it, and it's not, and your disagreement with it isn't an emergent phenomenon because of your belief in something else. It's just that you disbelieve in geometric unity. It's just destructive. But it's also destructive to Tim's mind. Like, it's more destructive to him than it is to anyone else. I'm not complaining about like, oh, poor Eric. Like, no, this is more hurtful, more harmful to Tim than it is to anyone else, because it's Tim who has become the chicken with his head cut off, because he has defined his perspective by an anti ideology or a you know, by something that he doesn't believe exists. If you think something is wrong, in the theory of everything, it means it doesn't exist. Okay, something that's wrong isn't true, and there isn't really wrong in the theory of everything. There's just true and that's it. There isn't even true and not true. There's just true. That's it. And anything else that doesn't fall into that description or that definition of true just doesn't exist. And so, objectively, it is this realm in which your mind operates. So if you're like, oh, well, you know, I'm going to define my perspective by something that's wrong. Well, your mind operates in objectivity, and because of that, you're defining your mind by something that doesn't exist, and you're going to just like spiral. Like a chicken with its head cut off. Because you're chasing like a non-structure. Like, that doesn't work. I mean, obviously, like, Tim would disagree with all of this probably, because like this is the lessons that you learn when you're working on a theory of everything, not just like debunking one. And I understand the frustration with Eric's like vagueness in describing geometric unity, and he is vague and it's purposeful, and I know that it's not entirely purposeful all the time, but I know that it's also purposeful, and that's because you know, if he was really blatant about the implications of geometric unity, he would experience even more hostility from the scientific and academic environment. And he has in the past, when he unveiled it as his thesis. They literally like changed the rules on him and like didn't let him defend it, and like there was so much hostility that went on that it's almost unbelievable. But I know that it's probably true because I've experienced it as well. It's like an irrational level. People will say, "Well, that doesn't make sense." No, it doesn't. But it's like Chris Langan says, the way in which you deal with theism in the sciences is you ban it. You don't engage with theists logically in the sciences or in academia because you can't. So you just ban it. And that's because of that whole thing of like, you know, you can't, basically you've started engaging with an idea that's unfalsifiable, and like science doesn't know what it's doing, or the scientific establishment doesn't know what it's doing because it's so used to falsifying things. And all of a sudden there's a new idea that's unfalsifiable, but also does seem to make some sense, but it's unfalsifiable, and it's also against everyone in the sciences, basically their perspective of the world, which means if it turned out to be true, everybody's got egg on their face, but not just egg on their face. None of them are experts in what they think. Their entire perspective on reality is, it is wrong. It's not just like, oh, they were off on something. It's like, no, they thought consciousness came from unconsciousness. They thought this was all chance. Like, they didn't think it was the combination of logical inevitability and you know, choice. It's just chance. And chance doesn't really exist mathematically. So, you know, good luck creating a random number generator that's actually random. But yeah, Eric is definitely vague about the implications of his theory, but not entirely. You go through geometric unity and you start seeing not so much here, but when you get into like here, and he's doing his description at the end of his presentation, this is not vague. It's just that it goes over the head of people who can't contemplate it. So, like, listen to this.
any earlier theory. Now, every time you have an effective theory, which is a partial theory, there is always the idea that you can have recourse to a lower level strata. So you don't have to explain, in some sense, everything coming from very little or nothing.
Exactly. This is what I mean. An effective theory, that's the word for it, not an operative theory like I called it, but an effective theory versus, you know, like a objectively true theory.
Known to make many
So
recourse to a lower level strata. So you don't have to explain, in some sense, everything coming from very little or nothing.
nothing, everything doesn't come from nothing. There's nothingness doesn't exist. But
issue that people don't talk enough about is the problem of the fire that lights itself. And I think this,
it's not a fire that lights itself. That's like one of those bad questions. There's no answer. It's a fire that fuels itself, and it's always been lit. Okay, that's the answer to that question. I have it on my website. It's not a fire that lights itself. It's a fire that fuels itself and has never not been burning.
Beautifully demonstrated by M.C. Escher in his famous lithograph Drawing Hands, where he takes the idea of the canvas or the paper as a given, but somehow he imagines that the canvas could will into existence the ink needed to draw the hands that move the pen that draw the hands.
This structure. This is why I defend geometric unity, because I can't say it's wrong without attacking my own work to some degree. It says, given that primary perspectives are perceived in instances of consciousness, and someone can only be conscious of perspectives of relationships, the sentient singularities, quantum of consciousness, and its entangled primary perspectives that inform it are simultaneously created of and created by each other. Like this is this. It's creating itself.
Concept is actually the super tricky part, in my opinion, about going from effective theories to any attempt at a
and it's not really creating itself, it's like generating the change of itself. Because I think that it's just like the sentientness of existence is a logical inevitability, it seems. It's not something that had to be made or just like popped into existence one day. It is existence. Nothing can exist other than that. It's a loop of coherent information. A loop of coherence is necessary to information processing, which is necessary to contextualization of information, which is necessary to the existence of information, like, at all. So it's just inevitable.
Theory. So, with that said, what I want to think about is what antecedents does this concept have in physics? And I find that there really aren't any candidate theories of everything or unified field theories that I can find that plausibly give us an idea of how a canvas would will an entire universe into being. And so that...
Notice how he said will an entire universe into being, not like cause, but will.
Really, to me, is the conceptual problem that I think bedevils this and makes this step quite a bit more difficult than some of the previous technical steps. If you ask for antecedents, however, there is one that, at least within physics, is relatively famous, and that is by John Archibald Wheeler. And it is a picture, in some sense, of the universe contemplating itself. And so this idea that somehow the universe would contemplate itself into existence, maybe the letter U is in some sense analogous to the paper, and somehow the I, rather than the hand, is drawn across to look at a different part of the U. And whether or not that has meaning is intrinsically always a question.
It does have meaning. Everything has some, meaning. This is an extra arithmetic symmetry. The you, meaning you, like someone, you are someone, and it is looking at itself. Like, it's not a coincidence. Also, Chris Langan also uses this structure that it seems like was made by Archibald Wheeler. John Archibald Wheeler. I think that's who we just said. I have no idea who that is, but I've seen it in like some papers of Chris Langan as well. I just skimmed and I saw this same structure.
Are animated by it, but I don't know that people have actually worked on it. The quote of Einstein's, I think, that really speaks to me often the most, and maybe even was my thesis problem, was he asked whether the creator had any choice in how the universe was constructed. And so I think if you believe that the canvas is itself the that which generates all of the content and all of the action, you're left with a puzzle as to how would you move forward from this. It might be easier in a mathematical sense to temporarily put the U on its back, to put it more in line with a standard picture that many mathematicians and physicists will be familiar with. In sector 1 of the geometric unity theory, space-time is replaced and recovered by the observer's contemplating itself. And so there are several sectors of GU, and I wanted to go through at least 4 of them. In Einstein's space-time, we have not only 4 degrees of freedom, but also a space-time metric representing rulers and protractors. If we're going to replace that, it's very tricky because it's almost impossible to think about what would be underneath Einstein's theory.
You know what's underneath Einstein's theory? This is underneath Einstein's theory. It's how you orient without using relativistic contextual descriptions. The 4 primary perspectives. He called them parameters, I think, in his paper, which is a new development because he used to call them dimensions, and I think that that's just not a good term anymore, and I think he realized that too. It just confused everybody. But to call them parameters is actually a good choice. I really liked the switch. You can call them 4 primary parameters that are emergent from 4 primary perspectives and overlap with 4 primary perspectives, essentially, and that creates 8. And then the sum total of those together as oneness added is 9. So this is where you get this. But it leads to bot periodicity and all kinds of things. E8, that's where this 8 comes from. It's 2 structures of 4. It's a mind within a mind, and each mind is a 4-dimensional, quote-unquote, manifold, but it's really it's like a knot with 4 relations that result in it tying a smaller version of itself inside itself and therefore contemplating itself. So it's a mind creating minds within itself, and a knot of a string of information causes that string of information to self-reflect on itself, literally, and that's what causes self-awareness. So this is what Eric is describing, and not so bluntly, but if you are aware of what the structure is, it is actually like very apparent. And I understand why you would want to be more vague, but I also understand why the context is necessary to actually taking something like geometric unity that appears so complex and just making it intuitive. And you can.
Now, there's a huge problem in the spinorial sector, which I don't know why more people don't worry about, which is that spinors aren't defined for representations of the double cover of GL4R, the general linear group's effective spin analog. And as such, if we imagine that we will one day quantize gravity, we will lose our definition not of the electrons, but let's say of the medium in which the electrons operate. That is, there will be no spinorial bundle until we have an observation of a metric. So one thing we can do is to take a manifold XD as the starting point.
This is something I'm going to need to think about a lot because I think that quantizing gravity is recognizing that you're inside the particle that is the force carrier particle of gravity that is the graviton. It's oneness. So like if you want to look at the four primary perspectives to basically reconcile the relationships between the forces, and oneness is the superposition of outside, inside, and separate, because oneness is outside and inside of separateness. So it is outside and inside of separateness. It's literally these three summed is also the fourth. So gravity is the, like, it's the unified force of animation, and then it's broken into a triality in relativity, just like past, present, future is broken into a triality, or length, width, height, or forwards, backwards, current location, or electron, muon, and tau, or up quark, charm quark, and truth quark. This trialic structure exists within. These are the ones within, and this is like the objective perspective. So the only quantization of gravity that you're going to get is that the universe is the graviton. It is moving, and it's moving us via gravity, and then that gravity splits into three perspectives, and we see the weak force due to the emergence of entropy, and as an emergent perspective. So say entropy from spin. Gravity is also spin, so like it's all spin. Like that's what it is. It's just the universe is spinning around, and it's moving you and me and it, and it just changes our perspective. And entropy is what you perceive when something spins faster than you, and then therefore it's like it looks like you're falling behind, or just like on the highway, if someone speeds up, if they were going the same speed as you and they speed up, it looks like, if you didn't know they sped up, then it would look to you like you went backwards, which is what entropy kind of is viewed as. So that's what basically is happening, is that the universe is speeding up, and we get the perspective of going backwards, and we experience entropy, the perspective of entropy. The strong force, I think, is the force of romantic love. I really believe this. That's why it is the force responsible for the nuclear family, is the same force responsible for the nucleus, the bonding of a proton and neutron in the nucleus of an atom, the nucleons of an atom. So it makes sense. It's not crazy. Protons are males, neutrons are females. And then electromagnetism would be basically like the social energy, the social, the opposing feelings of our social societal environment, as well as the attracting feelings of our social societal environment as a whole. I think this is my theory, at least right now. And then the strong force is the force that bonds. It's the marriage force. It is in an atom, and it is in a nuclear family as well. It is the strong force that overcomes the weak electromagnetism. People's bonds with their spouse supersede the bond of them with the rest of society. And then weak force is entropy, being perceived, and it's all within gravity, which is just, it's all generated by this, all of it. So I think romantic bonding is essentially in sync movement in that spin by particles that are symmetrical. And then electromagnetism is essentially the bonding and repulsion that occurs in spin in the spinning of a bunch of particles. So sometimes some particles come closer, sometimes some particles get further, sometimes they're in sync, sometimes they're not in sync. This sounds like society. But, then there's the symmetrical spousal, energy. And, when I met my now wife, I knew, and I said it the very first day that I met her, that I thought I was going to marry her. I said it to my brother on the phone. And the reason why I said that wasn't because we got along so well or anything. It was because I noticed that she was the oldest of, of four, kids, and I was the oldest of four kids, but she had, three girls and then a boy, and I had three boys and then a girl, and like, it was just like, she's black and I'm very white, and like she was a theist, not just a theist, but a Christian, and I was an anti-theist, really, but I would have called myself an atheist. There was so many symmetries. It was like I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I've said that before on here. That is what I'm talking about. That is like two particles are moving in sync with each other.
There's this very weird feature that we've seemingly unearthed about the physical universe, which is that it unexpectedly has this bizarrely good taste about what to care about within. It's as if you let it loose in the mathematical jewelry store, and it selects only the finest pieces.
Yeah, and we have to wonder if that's, is that just our human take on it? Because our human aesthetics have evolved within this beautiful world and universe. So is it that, Douglas Adams described the anthropic principle.
It's both, like I said, your perception is through the structures of mind, through your own mind, but you're also perceiving a mind that you're within, and you're perceiving reality as aligning with those structures as well, because it is a mind, so it also contains those structures. So it's not, is it just our human, emergent perspective that, is just logically, inevitably, like, evolutionarily, guided through, a non-sentience, and just logic and constraints to value beauty, essentially? Or is it that, this is a constraint of mind itself, and because of that, it's a constraint of existence, which is a mind, and also is, woven into how you perceive the world. It's both. It's not either or, it is simultaneously both. So this would be defined as a bad question.
Puddle of water, right? Thinking it's like, wow, this hole I'm in is just perfectly formed to my shape, right? Isn't it wonderful how it just fits me so perfectly, and it's so comfortable here, just like it was made for me? Well, it's like, no, the puddle got there and filled the shape of the hole. The water got there and filled that shape. And as humans, we ended up here and we filled this niche, and our aesthetic taste was shaped by what's around us, including the mathematics that underlies the physics of this universe. And so when we look at the universe, you might say, oh no, maybe it's just our tastes evolved within this universe, so this is why we find physics aesthetically pleasing.
Do you actually believe what you're saying right now?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's wrong.
It is wrong. But it's not wrong. It's both. It's that the puddle formed to the shape of the pothole, and also the pothole was formed to the shape of the puddle. This is not really that, essentially, that it's an emergent structure, but the way in which we interact and other sentient beings in the periodicity of sentience, or the stages of sentience, interact with the universe. It is a participatory existence. It's not just, the puddle evolved to fit the hole, or the hole was created for the puddle. It's that the puddle evolved, if you're thinking about this as a sentient being, the puddle evolved for the hole and maneuvered to fill the hole, and also the hole was created by the universe to to support the party. And that's the reality. It's both. It's not one or the other. So the anthropic principle is bad. It's just a wrong idea because it sets it up as an either or, and it's not. It's a superposition of both.
This is so cowardly.
I know, I agree, and I have to wonder about it.
I understand we have to pay lip service.
No, it's not just lip service. I think about this. Is it really my proclivities have been shaped by my environment in order to think this? Because I have to question everything all the time.
Sure.
Mostly because I don't talk to enough other people. Think about this. I think universe, you might say, oh no, maybe it's just our tastes evolved within this universe, so this is why we find physics aesthetically pleasing.
Do you actually believe what you're saying right now?
No, I think it's wrong.
But I think this is so cowardly.
I know, I agree, and I have to wonder about it. I understand we have to pay lip service.
What's so cowardly, Eric? Be honest. And Garrett Lacey as well. Be honest. They were just there, and that was a moment of honesty, and I commend them for it. But it still went over the heads of almost everyone who watched it. They're saying it looks like the universe makes choices. Okay? That's what they're saying. And it does look like that. And the structure of the universe is a structure that is structured in such a way that it would facilitate the ability to make choices. I can tell you that from my work. That's why I look at hadrons and I'm like, that's a sentient being, but I look at electrons and I'm like, that's not. Because I know what structures are necessary or seem to be necessary in order to make choices. And to make choices is necessary to having autonomy and sovereignty. Kurt Jaimungal asked this on Twitter today. He was like, what does free will have to do with consciousness? It's that the ability to make choices is necessary for defining sovereignty. And a sovereign structure is conscious. But Eric and Garrett Lacey in this clip are discussing the universe having taste, preferences, and they are discussing how it is cowardly to not acknowledge it and to, only portray it as like a metaphorical, not literal, phenomenon. And where Eric is like, I understand you have to pay lip service. It's like, he's talking about, I understand that we say things like, oh, the mind of God. But Eric said this once, he said, anybody that talks about the mind of God either really figured it out or hasn't and is using the term, for publicity points. And I agree with him on that. The people that are trying to figure it out, they don't say the mind of God. But the people that think they've figured it out, they do, whether they are right or wrong. And I'm going to admit to being one of those people, but I actually do think I got it right. It appears to me to appear to Garrett Lacey and Eric that it is a being that makes choices based on this interview that they're releasing. He also says it in existence, wills the universe into existence in his geometric unity discussion. And it's only when he's in front of all the physicists that he's like, at Oxford, where he's like, oh, did God have any choice in creating the universe? This was just Einstein's way of anthropomorphizing, the need for order. It's like, do you really believe what you're saying right now? To quote your own self, do you really believe what you're saying right now? That's my question. When Eric says that kind of thing in front of the room,
do you actually believe what you're saying right now?
That's what
I think it's wrong.
But I think this is so cowardly.
It is cowardly.
I know.
It's very cowardly. But I do understand. But the thing is if science has the goal of the truth, then the truth is the goal. It doesn't matter that the entirety of every single physics department in every single university across this country thinks you're nonsense. If you're correct, you will be able to do things in engineering and in, you know, understanding that they will never do, and they'll either come around or they won't. And it's like, why do the institutions matter if it takes us lying to them in order to get them on board? I don't want to lie to the institutions. When I first started this work, I almost kind of went this route. I thought about, should I call this the entangled quantum force? First I was like, the entangled conscious force, and then I was like, no, like that's going to be like, people are going to be like, oh, consciousness, that's woo. What are you trying to sneak in God? And then I was like, okay, the entangled quantum force. It's like, these descriptions are inaccurate, but then I was like, you know what? I abandoned any name because it appears like geometric unity is almost the same exact theory as mine, and at least it's describing the same structures and it has basically the same implications. And then I was like, actually, any name of a theory to describe existence must, in even the name, describe the essential nature of existence itself, and that is only fulfilled by sentient singularity theory. You could have said constructor theory as well if a constructor was defined by the theory as a sentient being, but it's not. So therefore, constructor theory falls short on that, even though it's an amazing piece of work. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's not wrong. Neither is geometric unity. Neither is emergence theory. Neither is CTMU. Neither is my big toe. Neither is, SO10. SO10 isn't wrong. My work just now predicted, 45 branches. I'm pretty sure SO10 predicts also 45 branches. So everybody's right. It's not that these are wrong. They all have problems, but they're not wrong. Newsflash to Tim, geometric unity is not wrong. It's absolutely a step in the right direction. It's going to prove to be largely correct in its implications and in many of the structures. I find that 14-dimensional observerse structure looking thing, I believe in my work. I see it. It's 14-dimensional structure caused by the overlap of two 4-dimensional manifolds with, each one overlapping 3 of its dimensions, essentially, or degrees of freedom, or whatever you're going to call them. The search for truth is the search for objectivity. The search for objectivity is the search for symmetry, and the search for symmetry is the search for beauty. But the truest beauty is always the searcher, and the truth of the searcher is that they are symmetrical to the sought. Means that you and existence are both symmetrical to each other in some way, which means you're mirror reflections of each other. That means you are the same, but also switched. So you're both sentient beings that are self-aware, but also are switched in your constraints and degrees of freedom, as evident in my attempt at the Observerse, which I would change the name if it's not Eric's Observerse, and he can always tell me and I'll change the name to Change Matrix or something like that. It's fine. But I don't want to take anyone's terms. But yeah, this work, not constructive. There is nothing about the implications of geometric unity in here. There's nothing about the philosophical implications in here. And if you don't have that, how do you know what this stuff comes from, all this gibberish? Oh, but you're an expert. I get it. Like, everybody's an expert in physics fields, even though they literally make no progress, and you don't have an alternative to geometric unity, but somehow you're an expert. It makes no sense. It's like saying, I've never built an airplane, but I'm an expert on airplanes on airplane engineering because I just study it, but I've never built one. And, maybe, sure, you know it well enough to call out problems, but, and I believe that, I believe that there's a lot of people that can do that, including Tim, but you can't be an expert on building airplanes until you build an airplane. Like, you really can't be an expert on airplanes until you build an airplane. Like, I know a lot about airplanes, guys. I could tell you every fighter jet made within the last, 50 years. Okay? And its history and things about it and, all kinds of stuff. I am not an airplane expert. And the best airplane experts, the airplane experts of airplane experts, are the people that have both flown and built airplanes. And I have not. But I have built, a description of the unified pattern of existence. So this is a great piece of work, this geometric unity paper. 69 pages. I wonder if that's a coincidence or if that's a joke, but it's pretty funny regardless. I am a fan of basically certain aspects of every single theory of everything that is out there right now, other than many worlds, which is total bullshit. Many worlds is total crap. It's just total crap. It's because it's an attempt to create a theory that is avoiding of meaning. So, I mean, they wouldn't say that, but I think it's unconscious. It's just an attempt to get to. It's an attempt to like show why existence is inevitable without any kind of theological implications at all. Which, existence is inevitable, but that doesn't mean the universe was inevitable. I don't think it was. It was a choice. Existence is inevitable as a sentient being, but for that sentient being to choose to create a universe, that was a choice. It was not inevitable. The theory of everyone means the theory describing every sentient person or being, self-aware being, but also a theory that hopefully with, at least some work, but, not requiring of you getting your PhD, could be understood by pretty much anyone, not just like people who devote 4 years and have a 150 IQ to it or something like that. I don't think that it will require that, because the reality of sentient singularity theory is that I'm hoping to place these structures in their real contexts, and in their real contexts they are intuitive, but not just intuitive. We have a first-person understanding of what charm means. The quarks are like top, charm, truth, down or up, charm, truth, down, strange, beauty. It's like, okay, these are perspectives. We know what beauty is. We know from, even if it's just intuitive, we know what truth is, even if it's just intuitive. We know what charm, be charmed is, or what is charming, or what charm is. When someone has charm, like that, we know what that is. We know what it is when someone is strange, or something is strange, intuitively. You don't have to be able to write a paper on it. But if I'm like, that's strange, you know what I'm talking about. I'm like, that's true, you know what I'm talking about. I'm like, that's beautiful, you know what I'm talking about. Like, these things are much more understandable than we've been led to believe. And anyone that agrees with that stupid statement of, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, then you don't understand quantum mechanics. Bullshit. You're useless in this topic if those are the types of perspectives that you maintain. Like, be useful. Don't wow and I don't know, like this kind of like weirdness that people do. Like Eric talks about it a lot. He's like, we just try and woo people with things that don't make sense, like Schrodinger's cat. It's like, is the cat dead or alive? It's both at the same time. It's not dead or alive. It's that it is simultaneously one and it simultaneously has oneness of mind and has an assembly of multiplicity as its body that is composed of structures with intrinsic oneness and sovereignty to some degree. So like, it's the superposition state, but it's not dead and alive at the same time. No wonder everybody's confused. It's not dead or alive at the same time. Death doesn't exist in objectivity. It literally doesn't. So it's just life. That's it. It lives. That's it. And it follows a pattern. And there's only one pattern that it follows. So it's not, we're very confused because the people leading the narratives have no idea what they're talking about. I highly suggest, my suggestion to Eric, which he doesn't have to follow, you know, I'm not as wise in some ways, and I haven't been around as long, I'll say that. I don't know about as wise. Obviously, he's wiser in some ways. Everybody's wiser in some ways. But I haven't been around as long in the sciences. But it does appear like, it seems to me, at least, that it's useless to try and... If you have to lie to people or be vague enough to where they don't understand it truly, then I don't understand what the point is of that. If they adopt your idea but they don't understand it, then they didn't really adopt your idea. To Tim, he needs to make his own theory of everything, or find one that he agrees with, and he should probably stay out of this conversation, other than correcting some math, you know, as he sees it every now and then, until he works on creating or building a theory of everything that already exists, or creating a new one. You have no idea what you're talking about until you do that. You just don't know. You don't know where things change, where the rules change, where, you know, it doesn't follow the patterns found anywhere else in any other field of study, or any other academic or logical or mathematical pursuit that you could pursue. It doesn't follow the same rules, and you don't understand those rules until you do it. You just like you don't understand certain things about building an airplane until you build it. You know, you can critique the math, but it doesn't matter. There's more to it. Always, but especially in this, more so than in anything else, there's just such a difference in rules. Like I said, I'm not judging either one of these men. They're both human. Tim is very talented, clearly, even though I don't agree with him at all in whether or not he is going about this the right way. And Eric, you know, geometric unity is very close to sentient singularity theory, so I can't really disagree too much. I think GU will prove to be largely accurate. The idea that Tim just disproved the totality of geometric unity is just nonsense. But, so, peace, thanks for participating. It was a small group today, but this was deep. And, you know, hit the like button, share this, comment, fuels the algorithm. Go to sentientsingularity.com, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, sign up for the email list, because they're going to kick me off as I continue to talk about morals on here.